I want to bring in Republican strategist Boyd Matheson, host of Inside Sources on KSL, and former chief of staff for Senator Mike Lee. Mr. Matheson, thanks so much for joining me this afternoon. You were hearing the same thing that I was. You were watching Governor DeSantis. Can we agree that he seemed very measured and definitely seemed to have shifted his tone for a different audience?
Yeah, definitely very measured. And I thought he was trying to strike a really interesting balance, Nick. I think he was trying to say rule of law on one hand and compassion, that those are actually compatible principles. So if there is someone legitimately seeking asylum, there's a process for that. And of course, the American people understand that and are the most welcoming place on the planet. And so I thought it was a very interesting way to do that in terms of rule of law and compassion, bringing those two things together. And I actually think that's where most of the American people are. So an interesting strategy there from Governor DeSantis. I also thought it was very interesting that he leaned very heavily into this idea of federalism, of deputizing the states to do some of the things that the federal government has failed at when it comes to border security. So that's an interesting message as well. He also went after those sanctuary cities, saying they've got to obey the rule of law as well, or they may see some of their funds dry up. So a really interesting balance. And as you said, Nick, a different audience for the governor, and he was definitely very measured there in making sure he balanced those critical components, compassion and rule of law.
And I think this is the first time we've heard him actually lay out the case. He talked about how in Florida, he enacted a state of emergency after they would see boatloads of Haitian migrants coming in and putting themselves in danger and putting others in danger, and that he made it clear that if you try to make this trip, which is already a dangerous trip, and once you get here, we're going to repatriate you back to the country you came from, making it less attractive for people to make that risk. And he's saying that, hey, I want to draw the analogy with the southern border as well. Do you believe that Governor DeSantis is giving an effective message for that border policy that he'd like to implement?
Yeah, I think this is the best I've heard Governor DeSantis on the immigration policy. And as you mentioned, Nick, talking about disincentivizing those coming here illegally. He also just started to lay out a little bit, as you cut away, some of the things that he would do to make legal immigration easier, swifter, and more fair, so that again, the incentives right now are all on the wrong side. The incentives are to come across illegally and take your chances. And so if you can do what he did in Florida with the Coast Guard and with his own assets on the water, they were able to dry up some of that because people recognized, hey, it's not going to be worth the risk, the cost, and in the end, I may end up right where I started. So again, looking at some very interesting policy pieces. I also thought it was interesting. There was a little subtext there, Nick. He gave a nod to Representative Chip Roy from Texas, talking about what needs to be done at the federal level in terms of Congress. But he also used an interesting word there. He said, I'm not afraid to do things by executive order as well. That's an interesting thing coming from a Republican candidate, especially those that have been very, very hard on the current president for doing things not through Congress, but doing it by executive order.
Boyd, quickly, I've got 20 seconds. I need to ask you this. How big of a role do you believe border policy will be for the Republican primary voters?
I think it'll be an important component to it, but I don't think it's the only component. I don't think there's a real monolithic group there. I think a lot of it's going to be economy, jobs, and opportunity. Upward mobility, I think, is going to be a big theme as well. Having confidence that we have a future and that everybody can live their own version of the American dream, I think, is going to be a core message. Border is important, but there's a lot of other things that are going to be on the table as well.
Boyd Matheson, I have every reason to believe you and I will be discussing this again. Thanks so much for joining me this morning.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.